90%. That is the staggering percentage of the global vitamin C supply, a market projected to hit $1.5 billion by 2030, that originates from a single industrial source, genetically modified corn. While your supplement bottle proudly displays non-GMO or natural, the reality hidden in the lab is a harsh chemical process involving volatile acids and fermented glucose derived from vast monoculture fields. You are paying a 3,000% markup for ascorbic acid, a laboratory isolate that is only a fraction of what nature intended. In the wild, vitamin C is a complex biological engine, a symphony of bioflavonoids, rutin, and enzymes. But in a pill, it's a lonely, stripped-down molecule that your body often treats as an intruder, flushing it away as expensive urine. Why have we traded the potent, living synergy of a 50-cent jar of fermented citrus peels for a $40 bottle of synthetic powder? Why are the world's largest food conglomerates betting billions on your ignorance of a simple, ancient kitchen method called Oxymel? Today, we are pulling back the curtain on the ascorbic acid illusion. By the end of this video, you'll discover how a 3-ingredient fermentation secret can unlock a vitamin C complex 10 times more bioavailable than any luxury supplement. In the sterile, fluorescent-lit corridors of modern industrial chemistry, a silent transformation occurs every single day. We are told a story of purity, of non-GMO labels, and natural wellness. But the journey of the average vitamin C supplement begins not in an orchard, but in a massive fermentation vat filled with genetically modified corn syrup. This is the starting point of the synthetic domino effect. To the average consumer, the term ascorbic acid is synonymous with the vibrant health of a sun-ripened orange. However, the industrial reality is far more clinical. Through a complex series of chemical reactions known as the Reichstein process, simple corn glucose is hydrogenated, oxidized, and treated with volatile solvents like acetone to yield a white crystalline powder. This isolate is what fills 90% of the capsules on your pharmacy shelves. The marketing brilliance of the $127 billion supplement industry lies in its ability to sell this lab-grown isolate as a biological equivalent to nature. They leverage the non-GMO tag to suggest a level of pastoral integrity that simply doesn't exist in a chemical refinery. By isolating a single molecule, ascorbic acid, and stripping away the supporting biological infrastructure, they have created a product that is cheap to manufacture, easy to stabilize, and highly profitable. But this isolation comes at a significant biological cost. When you swallow a high-dose synthetic pill, you aren't just taking a vitamin, you are initiating a cascade of metabolic stress. Because the body recognizes this high-concentration isolate as an incomplete fragment, it often struggles to utilize it, leading to the expensive urine phenomenon where up to 80% of the dosage is discarded within hours. This commercial illusion relies on our collective misunderstanding of what a vitamin truly is. We have been conditioned to look for the highest milligram count for the lowest price, a metric that serves the manufacturer's bottom line, but ignores the fundamental principles of human biochemistry. We are caught in a cycle of oversupplementation, chasing a phantom of health through a parade of synthetic white powders, all while the industry continues to consolidate its power, with global giants like PepsiCo and Nestle acquiring smaller natural brands to ensure the dominance of the industrial model. If the very foundation of our immune-boosting routine is built on a processed corn derivative, can we truly say we are nourishing our bodies? Or are we merely participating in a highly engineered market belief that prioritizes convenience over complexity? As we peel back the layers of this chemical disguise, we must ask, if the pill in your hand is a stripped-down isolate, what essential components of the original plant did the lab leave behind? The fundamental deception of the synthetic vitamin C industry lies in a clever linguistic trick, the rebranding of a single chemical fraction as the whole entity. In a laboratory, vitamin C is defined strictly as ascorbic acid, a singular, isolated molecule. But in the living tissues of a plant, from the skin of a wild rose hip to the rind of a fermented lemon, vitamin C is not a molecule. It is a biological complex. It is a sophisticated, integrated system composed of multiple parts: rutin, bioflavonoids, vitamin K, factor J, factor P, and the copper-containing enzyme tyrosinase. Imagine trying to drive a car that has been stripped down to nothing but its spark plugs. The spark plug is essential for the engine to fire, but without the pistons, the fuel lines, and the wheels, you aren't going anywhere. This is precisely what happens when we ingest synthetic ascorbic acid. We are consuming the spark plug of the vitamin C complex and expecting the full vehicle of health to function. This shocking contradiction creates a physiological debt within the human body because the body recognizes that it needs the entire complex to perform vital functions, such as building collagen or strengthening capillary walls. It must go on a scavenger hunt through its own tissues to find the missing components. When you swallow a high-dose synthetic isolate, your body must pull routine bioflavonoids and minerals from your own reserves just to process that single molecule. In a cruel irony, oversupplementing with cheap synthetic vitamin C can actually lead to a net depletion of the very cofactors your body needs to stay resilient. We are sold the promise of immune support, but the commercial reality is a product that forces the body to work harder to compensate for its inherent incompleteness. The industry hides this truth behind massive dosages. Since they cannot offer the synergistic power of a whole food complex, they simply increase the milligrams. A typical capsule might contain 1,000 milliliters of synthetic acid, a dose thousands of times higher than what is found in natural sources, hoping that sheer volume will overcome the lack of biological intelligence. Yet science shows that the human gut has a saturation point for these isolates. Once the threshold is crossed, the excess is treated as a metabolic waste product. We have been lured into a milligram war where more is perceived as better, while the subtle, potent synergy of the natural complex is discarded as economically inefficient. We are paying for the illusion of potency while our bodies quietly struggle to manage the chemical imbalance of a stripped-down isolate. If the industry's high-dose powders are forcing our bodies into a state of biological search and rescue, what happens when we look at the actual absorption rates of these lab-grown crystals compared to nature's design? When we look at a supplement label boasting 1,000 vitamin C, we are conditioned to perceive strength. In the industrial mindset, more is always better. However, biology operates on a much more nuanced set of rules, governed by a principle known as bioavailability, the actual percentage of a substance that enters the circulation and is able to have an active effect. When it comes to synthetic ascorbic acid, the gap between what you swallow and what your cells actually use is vast. Because the laboratory isolate lacks the natural transporters found in whole foods, the human gut has a strict saturation point. Research suggests that once you exceed a dose of 200 millimoles of synthetic acid at one time, the absorption rate drops precipitously. By the time you reach the 1,000 millimolar mark, your body is discarding more than half of the dose. It is a biological rejection of an oversized, incomplete fragment. This is where the magic of natural fermentation in the complex model changes the game. In nature, vitamin C doesn't travel alone. It is escorted by bioflavonoids like quercetin and hesperidin, which act as biological keys, unlocking the cellular gates that allow the vitamin to enter. Science has shown that vitamin C consumed within a food matrix or a fermented complex is absorbed up to 35% more efficiently and remains in the blood plasma significantly longer than its synthetic counterpart. Why? Because the body recognizes the package. When we use traditional methods like lactic acid fermentation or honey vinegar extraction, Oxymel, we aren't just preserving the plant, we are predigesting it. The acid environment breaks down the tough cellulose walls of citrus rinds and herbs, releasing the vitamin C and its cofactors into a predigested, ionic form that the human gut can identify and transport with ease. Furthermore, the fermentation process adds a layer of postbiotic intelligence that no laboratory can replicate. As beneficial bacteria consume the sugars in the fruit or herb, they produce organic acids and enzymes that further enhance the stability of the vitamin C complex. While synthetic powders begin to oxidize and lose potency the moment they are exposed to air, the living environment of a fermented extract acts as a self-preserving shield. We have been sold a lie that high dosage is a substitute for high intelligence. We are chasing milligrams while ignoring the escort molecules that dictate whether those milligrams ever reach our heart, our skin, or our immune cells. The bioavailability gap is the silent thief of the supplement world, taking your money and giving you nothing but metabolic work in return. As we realize that our bodies are designed to recognize complex packages rather than isolated crystals, we must look back at how our ancestors managed to stay resilient without a single chemical plant in sight. How did they bottle the sun using nothing but the rhythm of the seasons? For millennia, long before the first industrial centrifuge spun or the first synthetic molecule was crystallized in a lab, humanity possessed a sophisticated understanding of how to bottle the potency of nature. Our ancestors were not concerned with isolated milligrams. They were masters of biological synergy. In the ancient traditions of the Mediterranean, the Near East and East Asia, the extraction of vital nutrients was considered a form of kitchen alchemy, a slow, rhythmic process that respected the integrity of the whole plant. One of the most powerful and now largely forgotten methods was the creation of oxymel. Derived from the Greek words oxys, acid, and melai, honey, this preparation dates back to the time of Hippocrates. It wasn't just a culinary condiment, it was a primary delivery system for the very vitamin C complexes we struggle to absorb today. By macerating herbs like rose hips, pine needles, or citrus rinds in a mixture of raw honey and live cultured vinegar, ancient healers were performing a dual-action extraction. The acetic acid in the vinegar acted as a solvent, breaking down the tough cellular matrices to release minerals and vitamins, while the honey acted as a preservative and an enzymatic carrier. Unlike a modern pill that sits inert in your stomach, an oxymel is a living extract. The fermentation occurring within the jar ensured that the nutrients were already ionized and bonded to organic acids, making them instantly recognizable to the human digestive tract. In medieval Europe, and through the Ayurvedic traditions of India, these fermented tonics were the standard for respiratory health and scurvy prevention, long before ascorbic acid was a household name. So why did this profound knowledge disappear? The answer lies in the mid-20th century shift toward industrial efficiency. As the world moved toward mass production, the slow medicine of fermentation became an economic liability. You cannot mass produce a traditionally fermented oxymel in a week. It requires time, seasonal ingredients, and biological variability. The supplement industry, seeking a uniform product that could sit on a shelf for 3 years without changing, opted for the dead stable isolate. We traded the living complex for the shelf-stable powder, and in the process, we lost the instruction manual for how our bodies actually communicate with plants. We moved from being participants in our own health to being passive consumers of a chemical domino effect. Today, in our quest for convenience, we have forgotten that the most potent laboratory in the world is not made of stainless steel. It is the glass jar sitting on a sunlit windowsill. We have been conditioned to believe that health is something that must be manufactured and purchased, rather than something that is harvested and transformed. The history of vitamin C is not a history of chemical discovery, but a history of a great forgetting. We have abandoned the alchemical wisdom of our ancestors for the sterile convenience of the capsule, yet the ancient jars of fermented herbs still hold the secret to a resilience that a synthetic pill can never replicate. If the secret to true vitality was never lost, but simply buried under a century of industrial marketing, how do we begin to reclaim this power in our own kitchens? How do we move from the illusion of the pill back to the reality of the jar? Reclaiming our biological autonomy doesn't require a PhD in chemistry. It requires a return to the pantry. If the industrial model is built on extraction and isolation, the traditional kitchen model is built on transformation and synergy. To move from the illusion of the synthetic pill back to the reality of the whole food complex, we must embrace the art of the oxymel. This ancient preparation, combining raw honey, live cultured apple cider vinegar, and vitamin C-rich botanicals, is the ultimate response to the bioavailability gap. It is a living, breathing supplement that respects the internal logic of the human body. The process begins with the selection of raw, potent materials that the industrial complex considers waste. Citrus rinds, lemon, orange, or grapefruit are some of the densest sources of the vitamin C complex on the planet, containing not just ascorbic acid, but the essential bioflavonoids and rutin that act as biological keys. When these rinds are combined with wild harvested herbs like rose hips, which can contain up to 50 times the vitamin C concentration of an orange, and submerged in a mixture of 1 part raw honey to 3 parts organic vinegar. A slow, gentle alchemy begins. Unlike the violent chemical baths used in the Reichstein process, this is a cool, dark extraction. Over the course of 4 to 6 weeks, the acetic acid in the vinegar patiently dismantles the plant's cellular walls, while the enzymes in the honey bind the nutrients into an ionic, pre-digested form. The result is a dark, syrupy tonic that tastes of the sun and the earth. Because it is a liquid extract stabilized by natural acids, the nutrients are already in a state of high bioavailability the moment they hit your tongue. There is no synthetic capsule for the stomach to break down and no high-dose shock to the kidneys. Instead, the body recognizes the complex as food. 1 tablespoon of a well-crafted oxymel provides a modest but highly active dose of vitamin C that remains in the bloodstream far longer than any 1,000 millimeter synthetic isolate. This is the difference between throwing a bucket of water at a plant and providing a slow, steady drip of rain. By shifting our focus from the pharmacy shelf to the fermentation jar, we stop being passive consumers of a $137 billion industry and start being active participants in our own vitality. We begin to see our kitchen as a place of true science, not the sterile, profit-driven science of the lab, but the observational, seasonal science of the home. This shift is a quiet revolution. It is the realization that the most effective immune support isn't a product you buy. It's a process you nurture. But even in the world of natural medicine, knowledge is safety. Before we replace the bottle with the jar, what are the critical boundaries we must respect to ensure our DIY alchemy remains a source of healing rather than harm? As we stand on the threshold of reclaiming our health from the industrial complex, we must do so with the sobriety of a true scientist. The allure of the natural path can sometimes lead to a dangerous oversimplification, the belief that because something comes from the earth, it is inherently harmless. This is the final deception we must dismantle. In our journey to replace the synthetic pill with the fermented jar, safety is not found in blind faith, but in precise knowledge and boundary setting. When we shift from standardized lab isolates to potent, living oxymels, we are dealing with complex biochemical interactions that demand respect. The first critical boundary is the reality of contraindications. Vitamin C, particularly in the concentrated whole food forms found in rose hips or citrus-based oxymels, does not exist in a vacuum. For individuals taking blood-thinning medications like warfarin or those managing chronic kidney conditions, the high concentration of bioflavonoids and organic acids can alter drug metabolism or increase the risk of oxalate stones. Furthermore, the very medium of our DIY alchemy, honey, is a biological powerhouse that is strictly off-limits for infants due to the risk of botulism. We must move away from the one-size-fits-all marketing of the supplement aisle and toward a personalized understanding of our own unique physiology. The second boundary is the integrity of the process. In a sterile factory, safety is a byproduct of chemicals and heat. In a traditional kitchen, safety is a byproduct of environment and observation. Using non-chlorinated water, non-iodized salt, and lead-free glass isn't just a preference. It is a requirement to prevent toxic leaching and to protect the delicate microbial balance of your extract. We must monitor pH levels to ensure the acidity remains high enough to ward off pathogenic bacteria. If a jar develops off colors or a putrid smell, the wisdom of the practitioner lies in the courage to discard it. We are not just making juice, we are managing a biological transformation. The industry wants you to believe that the only alternative to their safe synthetic pills is a chaotic, dangerous world of DIY guesswork. But the truth is far more empowering. Safety is a skill, not a product. By consulting with healthcare professionals who understand botanical medicine, and by maintaining rigorous standards in our home labs, we bridge the gap between ancient wisdom and modern safety. We don't need to fear the jar, we simply need to respect the power it holds. Having established the boundaries of safety and the mechanics of the complex, we arrive at the final question. In a world obsessed with the speed of the pill, are we ready to commit to the patience of the jar? What does it truly mean to reclaim a health that was never meant to be sold back to us in pieces?